made one of my clients over $200,000 from LinkedIn over the course of 12 months, all organically. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it step by step. But before I walk you through the blueprint, I want to give you some context. And when I first spoke to this client, they'd already built a really successful business. They had great clients, lots of great case studies, a real leader in their industry, but his LinkedIn was invisible. His content was getting 17 likes. No one outside of his immediate network was really seeing it, and he was missing out on so many opportunities as a result. And that's where most founders get stuck. They've built something pretty significant. They know they're good at what they do, but when they talk about it online, it feels like shouting into a void. No traction, no engagement, no real leads. And slowly it starts to feel like the algorithm hates them or the platform just isn't for them. But it's not the algorithm, it's not the platform, it's the strategy behind the content they're publishing. And here's the thing, LinkedIn in 2026 is not about corporate updates or long-winded essays. It's just about building a personal brand that builds trust with people before they even speak to you. So the client we're working with is a guy called Sean. Sean runs an amazing business called Gemflow. It's a $100 million revenue business. But when we started working with Sean, his profile was pretty dormant. Actually, he had less than 4,000 followers, you can see here. There are so many elements of this that aren't optimized, and really it doesn't give him the credit that he actually deserves. So we worked with Sean, and over the course of 12 months, we took him from 4,000 followers to over 28,000. He's now sitting on actually 43,000 followers. And we also generated millions of views on his content. But the most important thing was we actually translated this into course sales for him as well. So he generated hundreds of thousands in course sales from the brand that he had built online. I'm going to walk you through the exact process that we used to do this. Now, the first thing we did, Sean, is we built what we call positioning. The reason positioning is so important is because the messenger matters. Now, what I mean by this is who says something matters more than what they said, right? So if you want people to listen to you, you need to be seen as somebody worth listening to in the first place. It doesn't matter what you say. If people don't think you're credible, they're not going to listen to you. Let me ask you this. Out of these two guys here, number one or number two, who would you be more likely to listen to for investment advice? Probably number two, right? You'd listen to Warren Buffett over your mate from down the pub because you see him as an expert on investing, right? Even if they gave you the exact same advice, you would trust what Warren Buffett says with a lot more integrity. Right? And the thing is, if you're just relying on delivering a good product and you're not actually building your own personal positioning, it's not going to be clear what you do. It's not necessarily going to be clear why you're credible. And it's not actually going to be clear how to work with you. And what that means is that you're going to consistently get overlooked while competitors that maybe aren't even as good as you sweep up mindshare in your industry. This is all a symptom of not building great positioning. So the very first thing we did with Sean, and the first thing you need to do is build out your positioning strategy. And we use three things to build out world-class positioning strategies. We use promise statements, which tell people why they should care, because a promise statement is a promise you are making to your audience out of what they're essentially going to get out of your content, out of following you, out of being in your ecosystem. What are they going to benefit from? And this is really important because, well, people are selfish. They need to see some personal benefit out of following you. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this. And for Sean, it was very, very simple. He'd built a really successful agency, so we wanted to teach other agencies how they could build a successful agency themselves. Our proof point was really important because proof is essential for building up trust and credibility, for people to see you as someone worth listening to. For Sean, we realized that he'd built a $100 million agency. That instantly gives him credibility to talk about agency growth and agency life. And it positions him as someone that any agency between 10 and 100 million, 10K and 100 million should listen to, right? So we leverage his proof to position him as the $100 million agency owner, and throughout all of his profile and his content, that was a theme that we consistently repeated. So your proof is third-party evidence that you are credible to speak on the particular subject that you are covering. If you don't have this, you are never going to get the credit you deserve, and people aren't going to listen to you. No matter how good your content, your advice is, if you don't have this, it's just not going to work. For Sean, it was the $100 million agency owner line. You don't necessarily have to build a $100 million business for this to work. Everyone watching this video will have some form of proof that they can leverage to build their personal brand. And if you don't, well, you just need to work on your product and work on your business until you have that proof. That is the harsh truth of personal branding. You have to actually be good at what you do. And the final thing is packaging. So packaging is all about what makes you unique. So there are a lot of people in the agency world giving all sorts of nonsense advice. And one of the things that made Sean unique was his perspective on agency growth and the realities of what it actually takes to grow an agency. We used a lot of contrarian opinions to differentiate him from everybody else in the space and to create a new angle for building agencies. So when you're building your packaging, You can use things like unique points of view, you can use your unique mechanism if you have a particular way of doing things, or you can simply use your personality if you have a particularly standout personality. And when you build these three things, your promise, your proof, and your packaging, you're instantly going to stand out against the sea of sameness that your competition are facing. Final thing we did with his positioning was really understand his audience inside out. When you understand your audience inside out, you can create content around the very specific goals, desires, pains, problems, objections, and fears that they have. And when you get clear on this from the outset, you're going to be able to speak more directly to each of those things, and your content is going to be far more powerful and far more compelling. This is the kind of ugly work that most people want to skip, but actually understanding this before you even produce a piece of content makes it far more effective. What that allowed us to do is to produce world-class content that was extremely beneficial and valuable to his audience, but also highly relevant and engaging. What that meant is that we were driving up lots of engagement, lots of visibility, but also things like followers and leads to his profile as well. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of how to actually produce world-class content in this video because I've actually recorded a video dedicated to this. So if you want to watch that video, maybe just open it in a new tab and watch it after this one. I'm not going to go into this right now. What I actually want to talk about is how we build authority online. Now, one thing you need to know if you really want to build authority in the content you publish is this principle of authority signaling. This is really important for subtly dialing up the amount of credibility you have. And with Sean, there are a number of things we use to signal his authority and get people to trust him that were maybe subliminal, maybe not like directly obvious in the content we were actually publishing. One of those was the imagery we used. Now, Sean's in a fortunate position where he had lots of imagery with high-profile creators who are actually his clients. So in the early days, one of our best strategies was just to share imagery with high-profile creatives. People instantly associated Sean with those people, which naturally transferred a lot of authority from them into him. So we built up a lot of authority through association in the early days. You don't necessarily have to have photos with high-profile people to do this, though. You just need to think about what the photo signals about the kind of person you are. For example, if you have photos of you on podcasts or on stage or delivering presentations to team members or to clients, that suggests you are a person of authority. People associate those sorts of imagery with authority figures, so be really careful about the imagery you're using. We used subtle cues throughout the content as well. Now, subtle cues is all about almost throwaway comments that you leave in your content that don't necessarily look like you're trying to brag or you're trying to hype up your credibility, but very subtly tell people that you really know what you're doing. You've been around the block when it comes to doing the thing that you do. For Sean, this was, of course, agency growth, so we would leave a lot of subtle cues around the success he's had with his agency, embedded very neatly into the content and the advice that we were sharing around growing an agency. Again, that naturally positions you as someone that's credible to talk on this subject and someone that people should listen to. Association I've kind of covered before with imagery because we associated a lot of time with other very successful creators that Sean had as clients, even celebrities at times. So the associations we were making were always really positive. We didn't try to associate too much with the kind of like 0 to 10K a month agency owner world because that's a highly competitive world, and we wanted to show that Sean was very, very different and on a different level to these sorts of people. So the associations we made we were very conscious of so that we didn't bucket him in the same category as these I'll get you to 10K a month agency gurus. We did not want to seem like them at all. And the final thing is the tone. Now with Sean, we used a very confident, quite assertive tone, almost like he didn't care. Now this doesn't come off for everyone. You need to be very conscious about what tone you want to use. For Sean, this came off though because we could really back it up with a lot of credibility, and it made him come across as this kind of slightly mysterious figure that people didn't quite get, but that really dialed up the curiosity so that people wanted to find out more. When he then released a agency growth program, which we did about 9 months into our work together, people were so curious to check it out. People naturally presumed it was going to be really high quality because of the quite assertive tone that we've used throughout the content as well. So all of these things came together to signal a lot of authority for Sean. One thing we did alongside the content, I'm going to get into the exact content strategy we covered in a moment as well. One thing we did alongside this was made sure we were engaging in the right way. So every time we posted for Sean, we made sure we were responding to comments in the first hour of content going live. This made sure that in the algorithm, we are seeing lots and lots of engagement, which is a good indication to the algorithm, suggests that this content should be shown to more people. And that was a massive part of growing his visibility, helping us generate 4 million views in our first year, and really dialing up his performance. We also commented on 5 industry posts every day. So we found other people within the industry, people with a similar audience. In this case, it was other agency owners that were doing typically $30,000 to $100,000 a month. We found people who had a similar audience to him, those sorts of people, and we engaged in their content. Now, what that did is it allowed us to piggyback off the reach they were getting and use that reach to expose ourselves to their audience. We also connected with 80 ICPs, so ICPs in this case being those agency owners that I just mentioned. We're actually proactive in sending connection requests to those people. We knew that these were the people that were ultimately going to join Sean's consulting program and actually buy from him, spend money with him. So we wanted to get as many of those into the network as possible. Of course, some of them came inbound naturally anyway, but we made sure we used up 80 of our 100 opportunities to connect with other people every single week by connecting with those ICPs. So every week we connected with 80 ICPs. We also connected with 20 industry figures. These industry figures aren't necessarily going to buy from you, but they will engage in your content and potentially put it in front of other people that will. So doing these 4 things alongside the content massively dialed up our performance. One thing we definitely didn't do is spend 5 hours per day commenting. You have a family, you've got a job, you've got a life to live. Some LinkedIn gurus are going to tell you to do this. Absolutely do not do that. We did not do any of this, and we still made a lot of money off the back of this campaign. Now, what was the actual content strategy we used though? If you think about this on a really logical level, there are only ever 3 things you need to do with your content to build a wildly powerful and profitable personal brand. You've got to get in front of more people, right? You've got to grow the pool of people that knows you exist. Because you increase that pool of people, it's more people that you can potentially sell to in the future. Having an audience is an asset, right? So the more people that know who you are, the better. But of course, you also want to build trust with those people, because if people follow you but don't trust you, well, they're never going to buy. So you need to make sure you're actually building trust and demonstrating authority to that pool of people that knows who you are. And what that's going to allow you to do is then the final step, which is turning connections into clients. So actually converting that pool of people that knows who you are, likes you and trusts you into paying customers or clients. Those are the only 3 things you've ever got to do, right? Any content you publish could fall into one of those 3 categories. If it falls outside of those, it should not be in a strategy. And I can't think of anything that would be sensible to do that is not those 3 things. Like, they're the only 3 things you've ever got to do. And that leaves us 3 types of content that we need to post. We need to publish growth content, authority content, and conversion content in order to do these 3 things. And our approach to this for Sean was our growth content for getting him in front of new people was very top line, like entrepreneurial or relatable agency content. We see this on like a traditional marketing funnel, right? So you've got your growth, authority, and conversion here. And really we want to get people into the pool of people that knows he exists, build trust with some of those people, and then some of them ultimately are going to convert. And the way we approach this for growth content, it was like general entrepreneurship, which is relevant to a broad audience, hence why it drives up growth and helps us get in front of new people, and top line agency content. So this is quite easy to consume. It meant that if someone had never heard of Sean before, it didn't require them to already trust him to like validate their decision to engage. It wasn't a lot of effort for them to engage. So even if they'd never heard of Sean, they would still engage with it. For the authority content, we went heavy on speaking to problems and pain points of agency owners. So it was more detailed agency-based content. Now with this, we don't necessarily care with this content if it's going crazy viral. We're focused really on building authority. So for this, we're sharing things like systems, frameworks, processes that Sean uses inside his agency to prove that he really knows what he's talking about and to add value to people. This builds up a lot of goodwill amongst the audiences and positions Sean as someone that knows his stuff, right? More so than any other agency owner in the space. So this content was heavily focused on frameworks, systems, processes that people could literally pick up and apply to their own business. That was massive for building authority. And that allowed us to post what we call conversion content, which we used giveaways and lead magnets to do. So our giveaways, we would create things like Notion boards and PDFs that provide even more value to Sean's audience, but we wouldn't just give them away straight away on LinkedIn. Actually, we'd share a snippet of it, or we would promote and hype up the value that was contained within these giveaways, but then we would make people comment in order to get access for them. And what that did was it drove up engagement on the post, got them in front of lots and lots of people, and left loads and loads of people wanting to get this resource. So they would be commenting under the piece of content to actually get the resource. They comment things like me, for example. We'd like promote the resource and say, comment me if you want the full thing. Loads of people would comment me. We would then send them a DM with access to that resource. And this allowed us to start to translate his LinkedIn audience into actual leads for the business. And this is where our conversion systems tie in, because the thing with LinkedIn, right, is only 3% really of your audience online are what we call now buyers. They're people that are ready to buy right now. 3 to 5% of them are ready to buy. 35 odd percent might buy in the future, and 60% are never going to buy. And to be honest, that's perfectly okay. The thing with LinkedIn though, if you don't have a system to firstly capture this 3 to 5% that want to get started now, but also to nurture this 35%, you're missing out on a massive proportion of the audience that could potentially buy from you. And that's because LinkedIn is very low commitment, right? These 35%, they're not ready because LinkedIn is very low commitment. It's free, it's easy to consume, it's very quick to consume, it's pretty personal, like you do it in your own home, on your phone, on your sofa, in your own time. Whereas working with you, or even working with Sean, is something that costs a fair amount of money, it's not cheap. It's actually quite hard to do, it takes longer, you've got ego on the line. So there's this massive, what we call commitment gap between your LinkedIn content and paying maybe 4 or 5 figures to work with you. People, most people at least, or 35% of people, are not going to make that jump on their own. 3 to 5% of people will make that jump, and they'll be the ones that are in your inbox saying like, hey, I'd love to work with you, can we get started? But most people are not going to make that jump there on their own. So we need to create resources to nurture them and gradually increase the amount of commitment they were willing to make, and to the point where they were ready to spend a significant amount of money. So for Sean, what that looked like was driving people from his LinkedIn to lead magnets, or these giveaway resources, where people could then book one-to-one calls with one of Sean's team and then actually buy his full course and work with him. And that was the full process we used to turn LinkedIn connections into actually paying customers and clients. In the meantime, whilst they were going through this process, we were also sending them emails in between. So we sent a weekly newsletter to nurture these people. And we did this actually for about 9 months of build up before even selling anything. And then we had a 3-month push where we really went hard on promoting the program. Because we built up all this goodwill and this audience from the content in the previous 9 months, this process here was extremely effective. And this is the difference between like having conversion and having no conversion. You're never going to know who's interested if you don't have a conversion system. You can't actually nurture those people into leads and ultimately clients, and you're missing out on a massive proportion of people that could potentially buy from you. With conversion though, you're dialing up the number of people that you know are interested because they're signaling it. If someone downloads a lead magnet, they're clearly interested in what you have to offer. So it's really easy for you to understand how many people are actually interested in working with you in the first place. You can then nurture that interest and actually convert not just 3 to 5% of your audience, but 30 to 40% of your audience. And that is the full system that we used to build Sean's personal brand pretty much from scratch on LinkedIn, take him to over 28,000 followers and generate $200,000 in program sales using his personal brand. If you like this video, drop a subscribe on the channel. I've got plenty more trainings like this to come. In fact, I'm just about to share a full blueprint on how you can build your personal brand in 2026.